Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Geoff, Pender, joined here today with my colleague, Taylor Vance. Taylor, hello.
Hey, Geoff.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We have a special guest today, no stranger to Mississippi politics or particularly transportation issues we will likely get into. Brad White. Brad, thanks for coming on.
Thank y'all for having me. It's my pleasure.
Brad is director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. As I mentioned, I should have said no stranger to this podcast either.
Right,
Always
yeah.
good to have you on. We learn a lot usually. Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. We could be here all day if I listed all of your pertinent background and experience. But
my dad would say I could never hold a job.
Is that what it is? Okay. No, former chief of staff to Governor Tate Reeves, former chief of staff to U.S. Senator Thad Cochran. As I said, the list could go on. But Brad, thanks again for coming on.
Thank y'all for having me.
Topic number one, some big news at the Capitol, something long in the works, probably from your standpoint. There is a tax cut plan in the works to eliminate the state income tax. But as part of that plan from the House, a key feature they focused on is finding the Department of Transportation a steady and growing stream of revenue. Can you give us a thumbnail of what they're looking at with that?
As you know, we run a federal program at the Department of Transportation. More than half of our budget is federal dollars that Congress sets aside every 5 years for the Federal Highway Administration to do work within the 50 states and our territories. And so we run a reimbursement program. So we have to have a steady stream of recurring state dollars and state revenue sufficient enough for us to do our work, because we spend the state money first. When Federal Highway Administration can ascertain that we've done everything to their standards and followed their regulations, they then reimburse us with the federal money that's been assigned.
So you got to have a flow just to
So
keep
the federal money doesn't
operating.
come here and sit for us to spend.
Sure.
We cash flow all of our programs, both the big new construction program as well as maintenance. So having this steady stream of revenue has been important. And what we've seen is 1987 was the last time that the funding model was significantly altered. Now, we've had wonderful programs like the lottery, the fees that are charged on electric and hybrid vehicles, things like that have given us some additional revenue in the last few years. We get $80 million a year from lottery, but we run $1.5 billion a year budget. So the last time that our funding model was addressed in a significant way was 1987. And so what you've seen is we've had the same amount of money going into our paving programs, for example, but due to the rising cost of doing business, whether that be labor, cost of equipment, cost of materials that goes into the asphalt and the concrete and various things that we use, you've seen the same money go in and fewer projects being done. And we have performance targets that the federal government expects us to hit in the maintenance of our system and the protection of the taxpayers' investment. And so the problem with the rising costs and fewer projects is our pavement conditions are starting to suffer. And what we want to avoid is be sure we don't get in the same position with our paving programs as what the local bridge system got into back in 2017, where the federal government said, okay, Mississippi, y'all have got to come up with a state solution to this issue, or we're about to pull our federal money back.
And in the meantime, you got to shut down bridges,
and that would basically
literally
just shut down our whole agency. So the exciting thing about this bill that's being discussed now in the legislature from our vantage point is this is the first time that we've had a mechanism in place that, whether you agree with the method or not, it's the first time we've had a mechanism in place that has the meaningful conversation of how do we provide for our transportation system in a significant recurring fashion. And so we're excited about having the opportunity to deal with that.
And I guess just to be clear, I'm sure most of our listeners know this, but how transportation is currently funded is through a gas tax.
Primarily through the fuel tax.
Right.
Both federal, that's where all the federal money that we receive on a recurring basis is from the federal fuel tax. And then the state fuel tax that we get 18.4 cents on the gallon. There's other things like contractors' taxes that I mentioned, the lottery, mentioned the electric and hybrid vehicles. There's some other things like that, but the vast majority of our funds have always sat in this one basket of the fuel tax.
And that mechanism that's being debated and voted on currently is, instead of a flat per gallon tax, which is already on there, both federal and state, this would be an indexed or a sales tax, meaning right now, if the cost of a gallon of gas goes up, you still get 18.4 cents in tax. Mm-hmm. If it goes down, you still, but this would be a 5% sales
this
tax
would add
that would
a
go
5%
up and
sales tax on all of that.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And then I'm told the Department of Revenue estimates that with the current price of gas, that would generate in the neighborhood of $400-something million
Sure.
a year.
And we did a little math this week, which is always scary, but current price of gas, you're looking 13-14 cents a gallon.
Yeah, that
This
sounds
tax
about
would
right.
add to a gallon of gas. You mentioned agree or disagree with the mechanics or the methods. Is this the way you would prefer to do it? Is this the best way to tackle it?
Well, we have talked with the legislature over the last 3 sessions about various options. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, it's always easy to go back to dealing with fuel because people do believe that a consumer tax is the more fair tax. The people that drive more are going to pay more of the tax that keeps the roads up, that they wear out more than someone that only goes to church once a week. But we've talked with them about other options as well. I would love to see us eventually move to a opportunity to have a more diversified funding model so we're not so dependent on the fuel tax as what we've been in the past. And there's been pieces of legislation like that in the past with the legislature, none of which, though, generated the type of revenue that this would. This would obviously go much further in trying to plug the hole or the shortfall that we've had in our paving programs. The way I look at that is it's my job to run the agency. It's not my job to make policy.
Sure.
So I'll dance at whatever tune they want to play and make the best of it. But I do think that the leadership in the House of Representatives with this bill recognizes that if the goal is to move our tax model in the state away from income tax and more to one of a consumer-based model, they can eliminate the income tax without taking care of infrastructure. And that's not just MDOT. That's also the state aid road system that's run for the counties all over the state. So they know that they've got to figure out a way to add significant revenue that would provide for our infrastructure system before you eliminate that type of revenue out of the state budget.
Yeah, and I don't want to mischaracterize what you and I think Commissioner Willie Simmons from the Central District have said, but I believe y'all put out a statement yesterday or sometime this week that from what I could tell, it seems like y'all weren't really endorsing necessarily the legislation, but y'all have been very thankful and appreciative that there has been debate, thought, consideration, and just legislation introduced that is providing some type of recurring revenue stream for.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty complex bill, and I try to stay in my lane, and the commissioners want to do the same. So there's a lot of parts of this bill that has absolutely nothing to do with MDOT or transportation, and so I don't think it's my place as the director of MDOT to opine on any of that, good or bad. But I think it would be wrong of us not to recognize that finally we've had some leadership step up in a very meaningful way and say it's time that we try to take care of our infrastructure funding problems. And this bill provides a significant manner in which to do that, which is going to force a conversation that we haven't had since 1987, and that's a good thing. And so that's what we're very excited about and appreciative of the House leadership for doing that. And we're told the Senate's going to have a similar plan. Not seen anything. But the Senate traditionally has been very pro-transportation. I mean, they've been very good to us over the last 3 years of the department. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that this is going to provide an opportunity that we'll go through the process of legislating and hopefully come out with a final product that accomplishes all the good that everybody wants to see done.
That was a big question I had. If you are getting some assurances that the Senate's going to address this issue and whatever, the House is already out of the gates with their plan. But
we're told they're putting together a plan. I've not seen any of that.
But it would address
we're told that it would
infrastructure.
deal with infrastructure.
Okay.
And like I said, they've been, the last 3 sessions that I've been there as director anyway, the lieutenant governor and the Senate leadership, Senate as a whole and House too, have been pro-transportation. I mean, they've given us one-time money each session that I've been director to go towards finishing out some of the big construction projects that we have. They allowed some ARPA money last year. I think we ended up getting about $104 million that went to paving to help supplement our paving program. So I have no reason to believe that they're not going to try to come up with a way to try to accomplish the same means that the House is trying to do, and we're hopeful for that. It's just that this is the first time that we're looking at recurring revenue, and as I mentioned before, due to the type of program we run with reimbursements of sorts and having to put the state revenue up first with our paving, which is the biggest part of what we do and the only thing the federal government holds us accountable for, the type of funding that this House Bill 1 provides is the type that we need, and it's a significant enough amount to make a difference.
If as projected, this would provide about $400 million a year. Is that enough on the maintenance side? Is that gonna have you in pretty good shape?
When you look at what our performance targets are, in a perfect world, we would need closer to about $500 million, but that's a big bite out of the apple to take out to try to address in one lick. So I think this is a very significant way it would go a long way. It would be felt and seen immediately. And by virtue of it being recurring like that, it would allow the private contractors that we have to rely on to do the work, all of a sudden they're going to be able to budget and know that the revenue is coming year after year. So they're going to be willing to hire more people. They're going to be willing to buy the equipment necessary to accomplish the work there. You're not going to have these contractors go out and buy a $2 million crane if they can't see into the future the way that they were after 87, that the work is going to continually come year after year. So
has that really been an issue that, it's been feast and famine, so to speak,
sure.
Mainly famine lot for the last,
like I said,
30 years.
Put yourself in their position. Why would you go take a loan out for equipment if the money that your biggest clients are getting to do the work with is one-time money with no assurances other than, good intentions for the following year? That's not a way that they're willing to do business.
We have less Mississippi contractors in that business now, don't we? Probably compared to 30
I don't know. I know that there's been a lot of consolidation.
Right.
So I don't think there's a shortage of ability to do the work, but there has been some consolidation.
This, I think you alluded to it. You said you wanted to stay in your lane, which we appreciate, except, feel free for this podcast to swerve out of that lane if you'd like. But look, this is a big political debate, the bill overall and everything. And one thing I'm curious, your former boss, the governor, have you had a lot of discussion with him about this? And one reason I ask is he has in the past been adamant that he doesn't want to sign off on any tax cut plan if it raises some other tax, which this would.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any real conversations about it. I've followed him on social media. I don't want to speak for him, but my impression from what you read on his social media accounts is that he viewed the House passing this legislation as a positive step in what he better than most understands is a long process. Sure. So I think the complete elimination of the state income tax is his primary goal, or at least that's what it has been in the past. And this is a bill that would accomplish that. And anyone that is experienced in legislating recognizes that, this is sausage making at its best. And I mean, this is just the beginning of a long process. But somebody's got to step up sooner or later and put that idea on the table in a way that would allow the legislature to truly have to address it in order to even have the conversation. And I'm grateful that we finally have that opportunity.
Mostly anecdotal, maybe with some polling over the last decades, really, or whatever. But probably John and Jane Q. Public might be more accepting of any kind of tax increase if it's going to roads. That appears to be one thing that, in part, some roads have gotten so bad that.
I mean, it's a core function of government. It's like I tell people, I have a sister and two stepsisters. Both of them are in public education, so I'm pro public education. But it doesn't matter how good your school system is if the school buses can't cross our bridges. And it doesn't matter how good your health insurance is if the ambulance gets stuck on the interstate on the way to the hospital. And it doesn't matter how much you want to promote economic development if the people you're trying to recruit here can't get here or can't get their goods and their people in and out of the facility that they want to build. So we are a core function of government, and I think that we're one of the items that the taxpayers expect their government to produce and provide a product to them that allows them to go about their lives on a day-to-day basis, go to church, go to work, and be able to conduct business here in a meaningful way. One thing this bill does, too, that I didn't mention, we are the Department of Transportation, not the old highway department. There's an element of this bill that for the first time, I believe in our state history, would set up recurring revenue for the other modes of transportation. 2 sessions ago, they gave us $30 million for ports, rail, and aeronautics, and we took that $30 million, and with the federal programs out there, we were able to leverage at the local level another $122 million. So that's about a little better than 4-to-1 return on your investment. This bill, I believe, would give us another $15 to $20 million a year that would go dedicated to those modes of transportation, which we would be able to leverage a lot of federal money for and begin really helping our local governments and communities around the state enhance the rail lines, airports, and water ports that they have.
Can you explain for this bill what the mechanics of the multimodal would be in this bill?
Sure. My understanding is by applying the 5% sales tax to the consumption of fuel, that would generate in the neighborhood, today's numbers, about $400 million a year for us that would come to a capacity and maintenance fund that the commissioners then would use to fund the projects that are outlined in our 3-year plan. And that's significant, too, because that allows the members of the legislature to have confidence with that fund being tied to the 3-year plan. That money goes straight to projects, not to buildings or vehicles or et cetera. But it also then changes the way the lottery is used, and it gives the first $100 million of the lottery to the PERS system to try to make that solvent. And then, as you know, the lottery's pulling in more than $100 million a year, and so whatever would be above the $100 million would be split between the Education Enhancement Fund and then the other modes of transportation that we have. And so that money would start coming to us. We think that would be like $15 or $20 million a year, and then we would go about the process of working with the local airports, rail lines, and water ports around the state to apply for federal money just the same way we've done with these other funds.
Yeah. I'm curious, just anecdotally, have you heard from any county supervisors about this? Do they seem supportive?
Some. I mean, I think the component of this bill or this conversation that they're going to like is the increase in state aid. The state aid road system, as you know, is we work hand in glove with them, but that's not a part of MDOT. And they have, I'm told, been running about $100 million shortfall. And so this would generate for them, I'm told, about $80 million. I've not run those numbers. But if it would provide the counties 80% of what their shortfall is, I mean, they would be able to really make some significant headway in rebuilding the state aid road system, which would help all 82 counties, particularly the more rural ones around the state. And that helps us, too, because one of the big headaches that we cause the counties is when we have to shut down a bridge to replace it, we by law can only detour people on our system. But that doesn't mean that a local logger or someone that knows the local roads there, they're going to get off on the county roads and go around. And so if the counties don't have the resources to make sure that their main thoroughfares are maintained at a high level, the work that we do that shifts things to their system is very bothersome and problematic for them. So from the supervisor's standpoint, and I'm told that seeing an increase in funding for state aid is the Supervisors Association, one of their bigger legislative priorities for the year. So I would have to believe that they would be happy to see that element of this bill.
And this bill, the mechanics of that would be allowing counties, not allowing, enacting a local option sales tax, 1.5 cents.
Yeah, it would.
For counties.
My understanding is it would the 1.5 cent sales tax that they would add to it in the incorporated areas, that would go back to the cities. I'm told every city in the state would see a minimum of 15% increase in revenue as opposed to the diversion they've had. The unincorporated parts out in the counties, that would go back to state aid.
Who don't get sales tax
Correct.
currently.
Correct.
And the upshot would be we would have most likely most places 8.5% sales tax instead of 7.
Which is still lower than the
Still
surrounding
lower than
states.
neighboring states. Well, one last thing, or let you get to anything else you want to cover in a minute, but you mentioned the term capacity projects, and for our listeners, that means new stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah. We run primarily 2 big programs with our Office of Highways, the maintenance system, which are the 4 paving programs where we rehabilitate the existing system, and then the capacity construction program. And that's the one that ideally, based on our numbers and research, we would try to build a system looking at traffic projections 20 years out into the future, and would try to stay ahead of the potential for congestion and other situations that would make the roadways problematic for people to navigate, less safe, et cetera. One of the issues that we've dealt with was about 12, 15 years ago when my old boss, Dick Hall, was chairman of the commission. The commission was faced with the same funding issue that we've been faced with, and they had to make the choice of basically putting a moratorium on the new construction projects in order to divert all the funds to maintenance, which is where our performance targets are. The reason that's important to note is because when that happened, the program that's designed to keep our system efficient went away. And that's the reason you have problems on I-55 at Gluckstadt or I-55 in DeSoto County, other areas around the metro area or on the Gulf Coast, around Hattiesburg, I-20 through Vicksburg. The reason that we've got the issues we've got today is because for over a decade, due to the funding issue going unaddressed, the Department of Transportation had to divert all that money to maintenance. Now, thanks to Congress, the last time Federal Highway was reauthorized, Roger Wicker was the lead Republican on that committee and was holding the knife when the pie was getting cut up, and Mississippi saw a $1 billion increase in that 5-year authorization. And so that gave the commission enough extra revenue each year for this 5 years that we were able to restart the capacity program. And that's where the legislature, with one-time money, the lieutenant governor and former Speaker Gunn and current Speaker White saw fit to invest nearly $1 billion into the projects that were brought to construction ready. Let's go on and build them and get them out of the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's happened the past few years is the legislature, basically a lot of the leftover money that they have at the end of the session, it has just gone toward transportation.
Yeah. With one-time money,
which is not recurring.
We thought that would be the best place for them to invest one-time money rather than putting that on a reoccurring expense. Would be, let's take the capacity program, these projects that are about to be ready to be built, but the revenue stream that we have is not significant enough to cash flow that construction. Y'all just give us the money to get those projects out of the way. And they've done that. Highway 15 in Tippah County, Highway I-55 in DeSoto, Highway 7 in Lafayette County. We've got Union County under. We've got several projects on the coast, Neshoba County, Warren County. So they've invested about $1 billion of one-time money in moving those projects out of the way. But again, if everybody loves the capacity program, the best way to save the capacity program is make sure the maintenance program stays solvent, or that revenue has to move over here. And we'll go back to just keeping a couple of projects alive so we have something to apply for federal grants with, but you won't see the significant construction that we've got now. And due to the legislature's past investments, last year the commission broke MDOT's record for awards. I mean, we topped $1.2 billion in awards for construction, both in maintenance and the new construction projects. And that's purely due to the extra money we had through our federal highway authorization, as well as the money the legislature's already invested.
Obviously, House Bill 1 and whatever the Senate comes up with, big issues. What are some other things you're on your plate or on your radar right now?
That's really the biggest thing we've got is our funding. We're always taking a look at how we do business. Are there ways to do things a little better and add efficiency to what we're doing? Always trying to find ways to be a little more transparent, as y'all know, something that y'all would care about. I mean, in the last year or so, we've put the commission meetings online where they're streamed online and archived. I mean, we've tried to evaluate how MDOT functions. And a lot of the problem that we had in the past with the legislature was that there was just not a lot of communication or effective communication between the agency and the Capitol. And so we've worked really hard to open that line of communication, to provide them a 3-year plan where they can see where every penny is going, what projects are being done. So we're open to the public and things like that. But if we could get our funding model modernized, then I believe we could do a lot more for the taxpayers of the state. They've been very good to us, allowing us to, the SEC squared that the State Personnel Board has implemented has been transformational for us. One of the big problems we had when I first came back is we had lost so many engineers and lost so many maintenance workers that our ability to properly serve the public in the time of storms and stuff like that, or our ability to do a lot of the pre-construction work internally rather than contracting.
Has that turned around? I know that
it
was
has.
a huge issue.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We're always going to need our friends in the consulting business, but we have started adding back engineers. Our salaries have been significantly altered. We've started rebuilding our maintenance forces. Coming next week, they'll all be put to good use. I mean, when everybody else is at home warm, our folks are out on the roads trying to keep them open and the bridges safe. So I'm always real proud of our first responders. It's when the weather's at its worst, our folks are at their best. But we have seen a significant improvement in that, but it's going to take more than a couple of years, to turn that completely around.
I'm curious, are you relieved and happy that you don't have to deal with enforcement, the motor carrier weights?
I was, frankly, and to be honest with you.
Don't have to run a police force on
July 1 of 2021 was my first day back at MDOT. And that was the day the law was enacted.
Oh, okay.
That moved them over
Highway
to
Patrol.
And I picked with Commissioner Tyndall that my favorite thing to do after that day was when legislators would call me about different people receiving tickets or things. I was able to tell them, "Hey, y'all move that to Sean, so call him." So
sure,
that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I've sort of a lighthearted question. One that I get from a lot of my friends is who at MDOT is responsible for the messages that go across the boards on the interstate.
Our public affairs division does a really good job at that, but you would be surprised how much input we get just from the public.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's all kinds of, and we do contests and stuff like that where we seek input from the public, but it's been a real hit with folks, and we just have people that just unsolicited call in and say, "Hey, what about this?" And we use a lot of it.
Some of their ideas.
It's good. Neat. It gets people's attention, and it's a meaningful way of communicating with those that are trying to navigate our system, and people pay attention to them. Yeah. We try not to get so crazy that they become a distraction, but it's been a real hit.
Well, we really appreciate you coming in, and we'll probably try and go ahead and extract a promise that you'll be back soon.
Sure.
These are going to be some big issues that will, over the next couple of months,
absolutely,
I'm sure,
would love to
dominate some of the legislative sessions.
Would love to.
Would love to get some frequent updates if we can.
Absolutely. Just let me know. Appreciate you having me.